So as I've been covering Skylanders, the thing that I've noticed the most is that most of the Skylanders that I have left are usually ones who have backstories and lore that span multiple pieces of Skylanders media, like the books and the comics. So whenever I find some Skylanders that have pretty one-note histories, it's pretty rare. Luckily for me, however, I still have that list that marks all the Skylanders that I haven't covered. And after doing a little bit of scouring, I would see a familiar face. And that familiar face was Wrecking Ball. Out of all the Skylanders I've seen over the years, doing YouTube and not, Wrecking Ball has always been one of the weirdest I have ever laid eyes on, just based off of his design and hell, even his element to some degree. But after looking through his backstory, I realized that this little guy was more unhinged than I thought. Now, I was originally going to pair Wrecking Ball with a couple of other Skylanders, but the more I dug into him, the more I realized that I tripped over my own 2 feet and fell into a rabbit hole. Again, and this time it was filled with nothing but unhinged insanity. So today, we are going to talk about everything I can find when it comes to Wrecking Ball and his history within Skylands. So without further ado, let's get right into this. Now, like I said earlier, Wrecking Ball has to be one of the strangest Skylanders that I have covered, and the reason I say this is because of 3 factors. These 3 factors being his design, his lore, and his element, and as you could probably guess, one of these is nothing like the others. But before we get into that, let's get into his development history because holy crap, there is way more stuff here than I thought. Interestingly enough, Wrecking Ball has a history that goes all the way back to Spyros Kingdom, the original concept game that eventually became Spyro's Adventure. Wrecking Ball existed at the earliest stages of development, and was originally part of the water element. He also went by the moniker of Force Field Grub and was originally created by Nat Lowe, but he wasn't able to finish the character and it was instead picked up by lead designer Toby Schatt. I hope I said that correctly. Toby had his own idea and vision for the character, but I did learn about another thing as well, an ability that was scrapped. From what I understand, this was meant to be a homing projectile that got bigger, yet weaker over time, but it was scrapped because of the damage inconsistencies. Now, going back to Spyro's Kingdom, you can actually see him in this picture I'm showing on screen here, which is supposed to be a sketch of the world map, which I could pull apart for minutes due to a few things, like the light and dark elements being present, but let's stay on track, you can actually see that Wrecking Ball is part of the water element here too. Even though it isn't said, this makes me wonder why he was made a magic Skylander, what caused that change. Because, well, to be completely frank, him being part of the magic element here makes no sense to me. I mean, even looking at his moveset, he looks like he's way better suited to the life element. But after looking at his backstory, it makes perfect sense now. So with that, let's go take a peek at it. Before Wrecking Ball was a Skylander, he was just a regular garden grub. Unluckily for him, however, he was the main ingredient in an old wizard's magic stew. The wizard would toss the grub into the stew before leaving it to cook, but while he was away, something really weird would happen. The hungry little worm decided that while he was being cooked alive, he would take a sip of the concoction he was currently a part of, and as he did, he decided that he would take another sip, and then another, and then another. By the time the wizard had returned, the grub had devoured the whole pot, and not only that, it had also grown 20 times its original size, and unluckily for the wizard, Wrecking Ball was still feeling a little peckish, so he tried to eat the wizard too, and he would have done so if it wasn't for the fact that the wizard tasted like a warthog, so he spat him out. This amusing story would spread across Skylands, and soon enough, the bouncy grub would bounce into Master Eon, figuratively and literally, and the old Portal felt like the Skylanders could use a stomach like his in their ranks, so he would be made a Skylander. Luckily for us, this isn't the end of his story, as he has a pretty large role in Stump Smash crosses the Bone Dragon, so let's go take a look at his involvement there. He, alongside Flameslinger and Countdown, tagged along with Stump Smash on his mission to the Giggling Forest to figure out why the trees were not giggling, only to arrive and find trolls turned to stone by an unknown being, which they would eventually discover to be the Bone Dragon. The group would be put on the back heel, and the Bone Dragon used its petrifying breath to not only turn Flint's hot air balloon, but Flameslinger's bow to stone. But before they too could be turned to stone, Wrecking Ball let out a power belch so putrid that it warded off the dragon. This would allow the group to send out a signal for help, which was picked up by Lightning Rod. The group returning to the Citadel, which was the ruins in SSA before they were, well, ruins, with a half-petrified Glumshanks in tow. Later into the story, he would once again join up with Stump Smash and Countdown to go to a troll bastion, after Spyro got the needed information from Glumshanks since Chaos had kidnapped Eon prior to all of this, where they would fight through the trolls there until they came into contact with General Disaster. General Disaster readied 24 missiles to fire at Wrecking Ball, but before he could even fire off his barrage, Wrecking Ball would just lash out his tongue and swallow the general whole. What makes this even funnier is that Wrecking Ball spends like a page or a page and a half tactically trolling this guy before just eating him. Like, god damn, there's being disrespected and then there's literally being swallowed by your Pause. They would take the statues and make it back to Flynn in his hot air balloon under the constant fire of the Bastion's trolls, and just before they were about to get shot down, Wrecking Ball would burp the biggest burp that Skylands had ever heard, which rocketed Flynn's hot air balloon away. The group would then decide to head back to the Giggling Forest so they could get the Bone Drag to unfreeze both Chaos and Master Eon, and when they arrived, they would discover multiple other Skylanders frozen by the Bone Dragon. When the Bone Dragon appeared again, the Skylanders would once again fight it, this time however winning with the help of Flameslinger and their coordination. They would learn from the dragon that it was woken up by Chaos and that was the reason why it was so angry earlier, so they decided to come to a deal. They would leave the dragon alone and let him return to his slumber if he unfroze everyone, and the dragon would do so. But unfortunately for everyone there, Chaos was also unfrozen as well, but Eon would quickly sort him out with a few spells, and with that, this is where his part of the story comes to a close. Once again, I kinda rushed through that, so I suggest you go read the full story up on Internet Archive. But to address the main elephant in the room, I'm pretty sure Wrecking Ball just consumed General Disaster. I went through the book trying to find an offhand remark, or hell, anything regarding Disaster's fate after being swallowed, but there's literally nothing I can find. This isn't like a Skylander eating an enemy in-game or something that you can't exactly canonize in-universe. Wrecking Ball is the only Skylander that I am aware of that canonically killed a man without batting an eye, while he was a Skylander. And I wouldn't have really cared if it wasn't in the series of novels that pretty much established the Skylanders no-kill rule. What's even more insane is that in this book, the Skylanders react to this like it's normal, even though Eon apparently taught the Skylanders from the start that Skylanders don't finish their enemies off. This whole thing kinda screws with the whole no-kill rule for me because instead of it feeling like a rule that the Skylanders should have and all should abide by, which could raise some really interesting story beats, it now just feels like an excuse to stop Stump Smash from crushing Chaos in this book, especially since it was Wrecking Brawl who was the one who freaked out. This is all just extremely weird to me because it doesn't really make any sense to have this scene in the story, especially for what was set up earlier in the book. But before we go, there's one lore thing I want to talk about, and that was Wrecking Ball's time being frozen as a statue. Yes, the Skylanders were still sentient when they were frozen, and for him, it was a living nightmare since he wasn't really content unless he was smashing the stuff around him, his thoughts being a mix of food and how to release his rapidly building energy. That is absolutely horrifying. Imagine being frozen in place and being aware of everything, like holy hell. SSA lore has literally zero chill compared to the rest of the games. But with that said and done, this is where my insane ramblings come to an end for today, because I feel like I'm going to lose myself if I keep going. Like always, hit the subscribe button if you enjoy content like this, share this around so it grows the channel, leave some comments down below to make the algorithm happy, check out Return to Skylands along with the Discord and the music link down in the description below, and I will see you all in the next one.